Hello, I'm Andy Liggett, and we are here in Matthew chapter 18. Matthew chapter 18 is a very interesting chapter. There's, I feel like everybody kind of chops it up, but the reality is that it was one kind of sermon. It wasn't really a sermon, but it was one talk that Jesus gave his disciples. And, you know, it was kind of many ideas that he just kind of compounded on them. He just kind of really let them have it. And the reason he went after them like that was because they were saying that they were constantly complaining. They were saying, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And I guess Jesus got sick of it one day, and he was just like, look, you guys want to know who's the greatest? And he picks up, it says a young child, picks him up, so like holds him in his arms. So it must have been like a baby, you know, like a toddler. And he holds this little helpless child in his hands, and he says, unless you enter in the kingdom of heaven like this little child, you're not going to enter. Which is interesting, because they're all thinking, when I get into the kingdom of heaven, I'm gonna be the number 2 man, you know. I'm right next to Jesus, and when I come in, I'm gonna be the minister of defense or the secretary of state. You know, they're getting all these lofty positions in their head, and Jesus is saying, if you guys have this attitude, you're not even going to be part of my kingdom. You may not even enter unless you enter like this little baby child. And then, so there's a bunch of different, or there's a couple different sections in this. I have my notes here. It says temptation to sin. This is all the same thing. I mean, all the same discourse. The parable of the lost sheep, if your brother sins against you, and the parable of the unforgiving servant. So he's talking about when you enter the kingdom of heaven, you have to be like a child. He's saying you have to humble yourself. He's saying you have to think of yourself as completely helpless, as only needing provided for. And you know, probably more so in that day than now, children were not, I don't know, they weren't they weren't cared about as much as children in these days. And so nothing could be lower than a child. And he's saying you need to be like that in order to be in the kingdom of heaven. But then he says, if anybody causes one of these children, he's not actually saying children, he's saying people that enter into my kingdom. If anybody causes these people, you know, these children, because he's talking about it, he says it would be better for them that a large millstone would be tied around their neck and then thrown into the sea. And pretty strong language. Just so you know, a millstone is this giant, like, donut looking rock, and it's probably around, I mean, they can be huge. I mean, they're hundreds of pounds. So it's like, basically, it would be better for you to be drowned than to make one of these children stumble. Now, there's a lot in this chapter that I'm not going to go into, but there's something I noticed this time that I'd never noticed before. And that is that there's 2 sections that, to me, almost seem like 2 sides of the same coin. And one of them is this idea of kind of confronting people when they sin against you, or if someone's in sin, it says you're supposed to go to that person and talk to them. And then if that doesn't work out, then you're supposed to bring like your pastor with you. And then if that doesn't work out, then you should get the whole congregation in it. And I think this is something that's very difficult. This is probably something that some people are very good at, but I am not. If someone sins against me, I tend to just say, oh, well, I don't like that person anymore, you know? I'll just try to get over it, but secretly it just kind of stews in me. And yeah, it's something that I really think I need to work on. It's something that confronting someone, like just sitting down with someone and saying, you sinned against me, or you know, or even you're in deep sin and you need to repent. You know, we live in a society of tolerance, and tolerance is way overrated. I mean, it's good to tolerate other people, but no, I take that back. Tolerance is bad. And by that I mean, you should love people. Loving people is so much better than tolerating people. And you know, if you love someone, you can tolerate a little bit more than you could if you didn't love someone. But loving people is more than tolerance, because if you really love someone and you see that, you know, the relationship between you and them is important, you will go to that person, you'll work it out. And you know, and if you care about someone and you see that they're walking into a path that is harmful, you know, you should really speak to them. I feel like my tendency is to just say, you know, if that's what they want to do, there's nothing I can do about it. You know, they're not asking my opinion, but if I truly loved those people, I would speak up to them and I would say, hey, you're doing wrong. So the thing that, before I was talking about that, I was saying that there's two sides of this. And the other side of that is that it talks about forgiveness. And it talks about the ruler and the unforgiving servant. So if you don't know the parable, it's like this. There's this servant, and he goes to this ruler, very rich ruler. He owes him a ridiculous amount of money, like, you know, like years worth of pay. And he goes up to him and he says, I'm sorry, I can't pay you back. And the ruler takes pity on him and says, you know, it's okay. You know, I forgive you for what you owe me. And then the servant goes over and sees someone who owes him, you know, just a little bit, like 20 bucks. And he's like, you know, give me my money. He starts strangling the man. And somebody sees it and tells the ruler that forgave him what he did. And then the ruler comes back and says, you know, if you're not going to forgive him, I'm not going to forgive you. And it's such a clear picture of the way that we're supposed to live and what we're supposed to do. God has forgiven us for everything. Every sin that we do is against him. So when it comes to other people, we should just forgive them. We have to forgive them. So that's the two sides, you know. On one side, you need to love the people enough that you're going to speak to them when they wrong you, but you also have to forgive them. So it's kind of two sides of the same thing. So that's what's going on here. All right, so that is Matthew chapter 18. Have a great day. Bye.